Joel Morgan suddenly opened his eyes in a different place from where he had last woken up. He was not in his bed. He was lying on a hard floor. He had been burned. Joel immediately got up and looked around. He couldn't open his eyes because there was so much light everywhere. The sun was shining like a fireball in the sky, and Joel rubbed his eyes. His cheeks and forehead were covered in sweat. When he looked up, he realized how strange his surroundings were. Unknown plants were scattered all around, reaching up towards the sky. Joel had no idea that such plants had ever existed before. The branches were thick, the leaves were large and brightly colored, and some of them had strange flowers. He found himself in the middle of a world he could not have imagined. He quickly turned around and looked at the ground, trying to understand what he was lying on. A hard, rough surface was covered with a metallic substance that glowed in the dark. He felt a little bit of fear. This was no ordinary forest or park. Joel tried to find scraps of memory of what he had experienced so far. The last thing he remembered was going on a nature walk with friends. Then, everything became vague. Suddenly, he remembered something dark grabbing him and he lost consciousness. But what was he doing here? He stood up quickly and searched for a sense of security that he felt lost. This new place seemed both foreign and threatening. Suddenly, he heard a strange sound. His ears caught a chirping, melodic yet strange tone. He decided to move forward, following the sound. He walked slowly, the roughness of the surface sinking into the soles of his feet, each step igniting a new fear. But curiosity was enough to overcome his fear. As he got closer to the source of the sound, he had the feeling that something unseen was speaking to him. For a moment, like a ghost passing through his thoughts, he thought that this place could be a very different world. Right now, he felt as if he was lost in the depths of space. Despite the anxiety that was rapidly rising in his heart, a sense of belonging was beginning to manifest itself. He took a deep breath, trying to relax himself. He closed his eyes and continued walking, leaving behind the horrible moments he had experienced. As he walked through the deep forest, he noticed strange structures among the plants. His eyes shifted to the buildings, built with sharp lines, but designed in strange shapes. Tall and slender, as if they could touch the sky, they dragged him deeper and deeper into a dream world. With every step, the fear and uncertainty inside him grew. Where? When? How did he end up here? As these questions swirled in his mind, he also felt a deep emptiness. Was there no one? If there was someone with him, maybe he would have gotten through it more easily. But here, he was alone. As he approached the buildings, a bit of curiosity arose in him. These buildings were strange and fascinating. The hatches, the structures that looked like windows but didn't really open, made him more curious. As he got closer, he could see suddenly opening doors between some of the buildings, but these doors were opened by a mechanism that he did not understand how it worked. Without a moment's hesitation, he decided to go inside. Once inside, he felt the temperature rise even more. The air in here seemed much heavier and denser than outside. As he opened his mouth to take a deep breath, a voice burst out. "Welcome, Joel Morgan." The voice echoed with a tone so familiar that Joel was taken aback. Who are you?" he exclaimed, his voice trembling. There was no response. He took a quick step to turn back, but there was another door behind the door, and it slammed shut. His thoughts became more and more complicated. How was he going to survive in this strange world without knowing what was happening? The feeling of fear that echoed in his heart suddenly hit rock bottom as he fell to the ground and tried to open the door. The feeling that something was waiting behind the door terrified him even more. There was only one thing on his mind: escape. But where to? Was there any point in running away? The risks of staying outside in this unknown world, coupled with the consequences of going inside, created confusion in his mind. Suddenly, the first ray of light that entered caused a much darker presence to appear. Gathering all his courage, he blinked his eyes open to see what it was. Something shapeless was slowly approaching him. He felt as if his eyes were trapped in the deep, dark recesses of this being. He recoiled in fear, but as it advanced, his fear grew. At that moment, he realized that he was going through one of the most difficult moments of his life. He had to do something. At that moment, something flashed through his mind. He had to get rid of it. In the next step, fear was replaced by a kind of determination. He had to get out of here. He started to run towards the back of the door. However, at that moment, the being suddenly stopped and smiled, looking in Joel's direction. At that moment, many questions arose in Joel's mind. Was this being going to help him, or was it a harbinger of a greater danger? As he pushed the door with thoughts churning in his mind, he was distracted by the movement of the being. After a while, the door opened and Joel felt he had another chance to return to his world. But something stopped him. The being's voice echoed, deep and melodic. The path to salvation begins here. At that moment he realized that escaping from here was only the beginning. He had to find the courage within himself for his salvation. Otherwise, he would be lost in this world of strange beings. Joel set out to write his own destiny. It was not only an awakening, but also the beginning of a battle within himself. He had to do something to discover the secrets of this new world and return home. He had no time, but perhaps the most important thing for him was to know that he was no longer alone. Joel set out for a new challenge, one that would take him on a journey full of unexpected and dangerous dangers. But on this journey, he would fight not only to survive, but also to regain everything he had lost. As Joel tried to pull himself together, he opened his eyes and saw blue-skinned alien beings, human-like, but not quite human. They all looked like women, with long, graceful bodies and unusually shiny skin. Their eyes were a deep and mesmerizing shade of blue, but at the same time, they were looking deeply at Joel. He immediately stood up from his seat and looked around at the female aliens. They all seemed to be fixated on Joel, using a different language to communicate with him. But Joel did not understand these words, and the fear inside him slowly began to grow. He felt a rapid palpitation in his heart. This place was so far away from his world, where everything was familiar. He was a human being, but he was not alone here. These blue-skinned beings were looking down on him. Many questions began to arise in Joel's mind. Who were these beings? Why were they here with him? Did they want to hurt him? The female aliens stood side by side, some of them with their fingers glowing like a source of light. Something was hidden in the depths of their eyes. Perhaps they wanted to help him, or something worse. Joel was filled with a sense of fear towards them, but at the same time he was curious. For a moment, he listened carefully to their communication. Sometimes their voices were raised, sometimes whispered. It sounded like a melody, soothing but mysterious at the same time. Just then, trying to suppress the fear inside her, she thought it would not be right to wait any longer. He had to get a chance to tell his troubles. "I'm Joel Morgan," he said, his voice echoing shakily. "Where am I? Who are you?" One of the aliens stepped forward a little more, bowing his head slightly. When they opened their mouths, their voices echoed more clearly than before. But the words still made no sense to Joel. Suddenly, He realized that the way these beings communicated between them was different. It seemed to be some kind of telepathy or thought transmission. Perhaps they could transmit thoughts to each other. For a moment, he forced himself to make a connection, even though he felt a sense of dread. "I understand you," he thought. He tried to send his thoughts clearly, with only one hope. This form of communication was very strange to Joel, but he had no choice. He just wanted to understand. "I am here, and I want to go home. Please help me." At that moment, one of the alien women approached him, her eyes shining. The closer she got, the more intense the light in her eyes became. Joel began to focus on her, trying to understand her thoughts. Suddenly, an image appeared in his mind. A big city, glowing buildings, moving roads, and a habitat. "You have been here in blue lights," the being said. "You are a guest in this world." Joel was surprised by this explanation. "Guest?" he said inwardly. "What am I here for? How will I get home?" His questions came one after another, but the alien's answer was becoming more and more complicated. "You can't," he replied. "To be saved, you must first come together with us. Your arrival will start a great change here. Our world is a gateway to your world, but your presence is necessary for this door to open." As Joel delved deeper into these words, he felt an epiphany. Perhaps this place was not only a trap, but also an opportunity. This world could open the doors to a different life. But the desire to go back still gnawed at him. "Tell me how to do it. What should I do?" he asked, desperate. A whisper was heard among the beings. One of the female aliens, looking intently into his eyes, conveyed her thoughts. "Our culture is based on uniting different worlds, but your heart needs to be pure. To open yourself to this world, you need to find yourself again." Joel was struggling to understand what they meant. The anxiety inside him made him feel even more helpless. Find yourself again? He didn't know what that meant. But he began to feel something else, a desire for some kind of connection. It was as if the female aliens were beginning to trust her. Maybe this could be the beginning for her. She had to open herself up to this world, but she didn't know how to do it, so she floundered in fear. Suppressing her fear, she turned to them. "How can you help me?" he asked. "What must I do to stay in this world?" One of the female aliens came to her side with her hands outstretched. Her eyes shone with a deep blue glow. "Self-discovery is a spiritual journey, not just a physical one," she said. "What you have experienced in the past will determine your future here. You must make peace with yourself. Face your own fears." As Joel tried to grasp the meaning of these words, his confusion grew. He thought of past mistakes, anxieties, and uncertainties. But now, perhaps, it was time to embark on a journey with these beings. He had to face his fears, and maybe this could be his opportunity. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Okay," he thought. "I'm here to find out what I need to do. I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to go on this journey." These words gave him courage. Even though she didn't know what was out there, she was determined to learn something in this new world. Suddenly, there was a faint glow among the alien women. The voices she heard began to echo in her mind. "Open yourself. Be with us. Are you ready to take the first step?" Joel opened his eyes and took a deep breath. "Yes," he said. "I'm ready." From that moment on, he was on the verge of embarking on a new journey. The women with the aliens would be a guide for him. Perhaps it was an opportunity to find himself again, far away from his own world. And perhaps this journey was necessary not only for him to return home, but also for him to get to know himself. As he prepared to go deeper into this new world, the fears in Joel's heart slowly began to subside. Perhaps here, with the blue-skinned beings, he had to embark on a journey to find his own identity. This journey could be the greatest discovery of his life. Joel took a deep breath among the aliens and began to feel better. Surrounded by the blue-skinned beings, there was a glimmer of hope. They would finally form a bond. But how that bond would take shape was largely uncertain. At that moment, one of the aliens put both hands to Joel's ears. Suddenly, he had the sensation that something in his ears was opening. The voices inside him became clearer and more intelligible. Now he began to understand the language of the aliens. "We are the people of Yelsan," said one of the aliens in a deep voice. "On our world, different species live together. When you came to this world, you joined us as a guest?" Joel relaxed a little more when he heard these words, but he still had many questions. "So," Joel said, raising his voice, "why am I here? How did I get here? Who are you?" His questions poured out one after the other, but his eyes were filled with despair. He wanted to know what kind of purpose the Yelsan people had. A whispering spread among the aliens. Suddenly, another alien carefully extended his long fingers toward Joel. "Your arrival is important to us. You are necessary to maintain the balance here. Your presence will have a great impact on the future of the Yelsan people." Joel was trying to understand the meaning behind these words. "What do you mean?" he asked, a little uneasily. "I'm only human. What difference can I make here?" The alien replied, looking at Joel with a slight smile. "You are a human with a different point of view. You are here to explore this world with us, to go deeper into it. But this is important not only for you, but also for us. In our culture, the interaction of different species is always valuable. Your ideas, if combined with ours, can open the door to a new understanding." When Joel heard these words, many thoughts ran through his head. Another world, another life. All this seemed impossible to him. But maybe this was an opportunity to learn something outside his world. "Okay, I will try to understand," he said confidently. "But how can you understand me? I only have the thoughts of a human being." The alien approached Joel. "I have found a way to communicate with you," he said. "Our culture provides a connection that makes it possible to share feelings and thoughts. You can enter that connection with me." Joel knew he was going to experience something he had never felt before. He put aside his fears and took a deep breath to make the connection with the alien. "Okay, let's do it," he said bravely. "I am ready to establish this communication." The alien's hands moved to Joel's head. Suddenly, he felt an intense flash of light in his mind. He experienced a moment when everything became clearer, when feelings and thoughts flowed into each other. It was as if a door had opened in his mind. The alien's thoughts began to flow into his mind, blending with the emotions inside him. It was almost a spiritual experience. The culture of the Yelsan people was based on transferring thoughts and feelings to each other. Feeling the alien's thoughts made Joel feel stronger. "This is a different place," he thought. "But how to live here?" The alien's thoughts gave Joel a different perspective. The Yelsan people were a culture that lived in harmony with nature and saw everything as interconnected. Their lives were based not only on the life of individuals, but also on the life of all beings. When Joel felt these thoughts, he felt something change inside him. "Thank you for choosing to be with me," the alien said. "Your presence will strengthen your bond with us. This journey will be a discovery for you, too." Joel tried to attach a deeper meaning to this statement. Perhaps his coming here was an opportunity for self-discovery. But he could also bring something to the Yelsan people. "Then we must work together," he said. "How can I help you? I must have a purpose here." The alien woman replied, fixing her eyes on Joel. "Yes, we must work together. But first, we need to learn about your world. We need to understand what is happening here. Your past can be a teacher for us." Joel felt his courage grow when he heard this offer. Perhaps sharing his world could be a step towards understanding this new world. "In my world, I can tell you how people communicate with each other," he said, "but we need to know how to do it." An agreement was reached among the Yelsan people. The female aliens would teach Joel how to communicate in different ways. This involved not only verbal communication, but also an emotional connection. Joel was ready to learn this new form of communication. "I'm ready," he said. From that moment on, a bond began to form between the aliens and Joel. Joel began to learn more about the life of the Yelsan people. He was fascinated by their culture, their deep connection to nature and to each other. "This really is a different world," he thought, "but here is an opportunity to discover myself." Over time, Joel strengthened his relationship with the Yelsan people. Sharing his feelings helped him to understand their way of life. The more he shared his experiences in his world, the more the people of Yelsan offered him knowledge. This bond between them was deepening day by day. This new form of communication, where thoughts and emotions flowed freely, offered Joel both an opportunity to learn and to express himself. The fears and uncertainties of the past were replaced by the beauty of this new world. As he embarked on a journey to find his own identity, he was also touching the lives of the Yelsan people. One day, together with the Yelsan people, they decided to explore different life forms in space. Joel was excited to see the new world and the possibilities it offered. "This is a beginning for me," he thought. "Maybe this journey is an opportunity for me to find myself and my true purpose." The process of making contact had strengthened Joel's connection to a new world. His relationship with the Yelsan people had become not only a communication, but also a discovery. Perhaps this journey would be a turning point for both him and the Yelsan people. Joel was ready to embark on a new beginning. During his time among the alien women, Joel began to feel a little more comfortable. However, what the Yelsan people were telling him was creating a confusion that he could not yet fully comprehend. The new form of communication the aliens had offered him had helped him understand them better. But now the news was shaking him to the core. The Yelsan people were threatened by a malevolent race from another planet, and this had caused them great anxiety. The Yelsan woman approached Joel and saw something deep in his eyes. "There is something very important I need to share with you, Joel," she said, her voice clearly serious. "Our world is under threat from another planet. An alien race from there has taken over the minds of the men here, and taken our children, our babies, and thrown them into the glacier inside the highest mountain on the planet." Joel's heart began to race when he heard these words. "Why? What is the purpose of these aliens?" he asked, his face a mixture of confusion and fear. "Why are they taking my children? What do they want?" The alien woman saw the concern in Joel's eyes and answered in a soft voice. "This alien race aims to destroy our kind, but they need people like you. Once they have our minds, they can gain more control over the minds of humans. However, your minds are weaker than theirs. That's why we kidnapped you to our planet, because you can be a beacon of hope against this threat." Joel felt a mixture of emotions when he heard these words: fear anger, and helplessness. Even in his own world, he could not imagine what it would be like to face such a situation. But how can I help? I am just a human being. This is not my world, and I don't even know your culture, the Yeltsin woman replied patiently. There are things you don't know, Joel. The human mind is in some ways stronger and more resilient. We must work with you to try to thwart the plans of this alien race. Your thoughts will contribute to our understanding. Also, through mind linking, we can learn more about the other side. As Joel thought about what a terrible situation they were facing, he also began to feel that this mission had meaning for him. The children were the future generations, and they had to be saved. So, how do we start? He asked, growing more determined. The Yeltsin woman answered with a smile on her face. First, you need to connect with us on a deeper level. We must work to share our feelings and thoughts even more. Then, we can get into the minds of this alien race. We need to understand their mindset so that we can develop a strategy to save our children. Joel felt himself being drawn into something he had never experienced before. A power, an energy was being born inside him. Okay, he said, I'm ready. What do I need to do? The Yeltsin woman approached Joel and put her hands on his head. We will repeat our previous experience. This time we need to make a deeper connection. We will join our minds and focus on the goal. My thoughts will enter your mind as I transfer your thoughts and feelings. When Joel felt the alien's hand on his head, he was once again enveloped in the flow of intense light and deep emotions. This time, he felt more. He was learning more about the culture and life of the aliens, becoming one with them. This connection with the Yeltsin woman was creating a partnership. In his mind, the fears, hopes, and dreams of the Yeltsin people were coming together. The Yeltsin people shared their past suffering, the children they had lost, the hardships they faced. Joel had become part of this struggle with them. We will fight together, he thought. We must stop this alien race. As the connection deepened, Joel began to sense the knowledge in the aliens' minds. He realized what a cruel and dark purpose this alien race served. Children were like toys in the hands of these terrible forces. We have to save them, he said with determination. We have no other choice. The Yeltsin woman was pleased to see Joel's determination. Yes, we must work together. Now, with us, we will enter the minds of these aliens. We must find their weak points. This is necessary to save our children as soon as possible. Joel was getting stronger every day. He embraced this new identity, leaving behind his fears and anxieties. He wanted to touch the lives of the Yeltsin people, to fight with them. I'm ready, he said. Let's start now. The Yeltsin woman took Joel's hand, and taking a deep breath, they joined their minds. In an instant, thoughts and feelings came together. Joel saw more clearly the history of the Yeltsin people and the threat of the aliens. It was not only a struggle, but also a process of creating a bond. The Yeltsin woman conveyed to Joel the strategies she was thinking about. We need to understand their mindset. We must find their weaknesses and use them to our advantage. To save our children, we must first take over their minds. When Joel grasped all this, he felt the excitement of going into this war. Let's work together, he said. We must do everything we can to achieve our goal. These two different worlds meeting in their minds brought new hope. Joel was no longer alone. Together with the Yeltsin people, they would stand against these dark threats. This power that came together for the future of children carried the light of hope. Perhaps Joel had found the strength within himself, and this journey meant something not only for the people of Yeltsin, but also for his own life. His eyes were shining. This journey will be a turning point for me. I will fight to find myself, she thought. It would be a fight for freedom for children. Joel now had a new purpose, and he was determined to pursue it. Joel began to feel the Yelsan women's attitude towards him. He understood the intensity of their anxiety and hope. Now, he was going to wear a suit with special technology that would equip him with the best equipment. This suit looked like armor, offering both protection and powerful abilities. For the Yelsan people, these suits were not only a tool, but also a symbol of new hope and freedom. As the alien women led Joel inside the ship, the communication between them continued apace. Joel studied the interior design of the ship with curiosity. The shades of blue and soft lights presented an aesthetic that reflected the culture of the aliens. The ship was impressive with its elegant lines and technological details. High-tech products were everywhere, adorned with various symbols and shapes. An artificial intelligence with glowing eyes guided them. When he stepped on board, he felt like he was in another world. The air inside was peaceful and refreshing. With quick and efficient movements, the Yelsan women guided Joel to a central area. There was an area filled with an array of clothes and equipment. As Joel looked around excitedly, one of the Yelsan women approached him. "This suit will be your new identity. It has all the necessary features." Joel began to examine the suit, paying attention to every detail. As the Yelsan woman explained its features, the seriousness in her eyes caught his attention. "This suit will both protect you and make you a powerful opponent against your enemies. It contains 5 special powers. First, the ability to fly. This will allow you to avoid or approach enemies. Secondly, teleportation, ideal for reaching your targets instantly." Joel listened to her excitedly. "There is also the ability to become invisible," the Yelsan woman continued. "This will allow you to evade the radar of your enemies. Super durability will protect you against physical attacks. And finally, the ability to shoot flames will be your most powerful weapon against your enemies." Joel got excited, thinking how impressive all these abilities were. "Will it be difficult to use these abilities?" he asked. "Will I have to learn how they work?" The Yelsan woman replied with a smile. "Yes, but your connection to this suit will automatically guide you. Through the mind link, you will sense how to use the powers. When you act, the suit will react according to your thoughts. So, you just need to intend it." Joel became even more excited thinking about how advanced this technology was. For a moment, he returned to his ordinary life in his own world. Just a human being, he was now on his way to becoming a hero. "Okay," he said with determination. "I am ready to use these powers. I will do everything to save the children." The Yelsan woman was pleased to see Joel's determination. "Now it's time to put on the suit. You are the one who will lead us into this battle. Remember, it is your mind and will that will allow you to use these powers. Trust yourself and be brave against your enemies." With the support of the Yelsan women, Joel began to put on the suit. It fit snugly around his body and allowed him to move freely. He felt a powerful energy inside him. He began to feel stronger, braver. The Yelsan women surrounded her, encouraging her. "Start flying now," one woman said, encouraging Joel. "See how high you can go." Joel hesitated for a moment, but determination drove him forward. Taking a deep breath, he gathered his thoughts and decided to try flying. Opening his arms, he let himself fall into the air. In an instant, his body felt lighter, and he began to rise upwards. Floating in the air gave her a sense of freedom she had never felt before. The Yelsan women watched her with encouraging eyes as she danced around them. "Great! Keep going!" they shouted. Joel twirled himself in the air and soared high and low. The refreshing effect of the wind on his face encouraged him even more. "This is great!" he shouted. "I can really fly!" As he continued his flight, he decided to try other abilities. "I could try teleportation," he thought. "Where do I want to go?" Choosing a particular spot in the surroundings, he closed his eyes and focused there in his mind. In an instant, he disappeared in a flash of light and found himself in another place. He had teleported to the place he wanted. When he opened his eyes, he smiled. "This is wonderful." The Yelsan women gathered around Joel to celebrate his success. "We are so happy you did it," they said. "Now you can try throwing flames to gain more power." Joel opened his hand excitedly. In his mind, he imagined a flame forming. Soon, a flame appeared in the palm of his hand. The flame was both hot and strong. "It feels a little strange to do this," he said, "but it seems quite powerful." One of the Yelsan women encouraged her. "Imagine using this on an enemy. The power is in your hands. You must use it in the right way." Joel directed the flame in his hand at an imagined target. Closing his eyes, he imagined his enemies. For a moment, he thought that these enemies were the aliens who were holding the children of the Yelsan people. He imagined how he could use his powers to protect himself and directed the flame towards them. As his thoughts and imagination merged, the flame in his hand traveled quickly towards the target. A spectacle of lights and sounds exploded around him. "This is wonderful!" he exclaimed. "I can really use these powers." The women of Yelsan celebrated Joel's achievement. "We are proud of you, Joel. Now we are ready for battle." Joel thought about how much this moment meant to him. He was on his way to becoming a hero, and together with the people of Yelsan, they would go to war to save the children. "I am ready," he said. "I will do whatever it takes to save the children." Having completed the preparations, he felt more confident, empowered by his new outfit and his abilities. "From now on, there is no turning back. We are going to fight and save the children," he thought. The Yelsan women rallied around Joel, giving him courage and support. Now they would fight together, and they believed that the outcome of this battle would be important not only for the people of Yelsan, but for the whole universe. With this new identity and responsibility, Joel was ready to set out. Feeling the power of the special suit the Yelsan women had given him, Joel was ready to set out to save the children. Everything was now clear. His goal was not only to save the children, but also to restore hope to the Yelsan people. The suit he wore had become like an armor for him, full of strength, courage, and yet a sense of obligation. The will he carried inside him was extremely determined against his enemies. The spaceship was speeding through the stars. Joel, with the Yelsan women at his side, went into the control room and began to define their objective. "Our target is the glacier inside the highest mountain on the planet," said one of the women. "That's where the children are being held. We have to be fast. We're racing against time." Joel observed the view outside the ship as they reached their destination in a few seconds. Before his eyes, an enormous mountain was rising. It was a place that clearly illustrated the difficulty of their mission. The loneliness of the altitude and the reality of the danger frightened him a little, but he kept his resolve, gathered his thoughts, and pulled himself together. "It's now or never," he murmured. When the ship reached its destination, Joel stepped outside with the Yelsan women. The air was cold and windy at the foot of the mountain. One of the Yelsan women had devised a plan for him. "Move with us. First, we will observe the enemy. We will wait for the best moment to rescue the children. Joel began to look around carefully. The interior of the mountain was dark and mysterious, but he kept his eyes peeled for the enemy camp. Within minutes, he spotted a hidden cave opening. Inside, shadows of aliens and children began to appear. "There," said Joel, pointing to the Yeltsin women. "There." They moved forward quickly. They realized that the enemy was still vulnerable. Joel decided to use the abilities inside the power suit. Activating his ability to fly, he began to soar high. The Yeltsin women accompanied him. As Joel hovered above the enemy camp, with courage and determination, he began to observe the situation below. The camp looked high and crowded. Children were kept in cage-like structures. The enemy's control of the children's minds had weakened them spiritually. When Joel saw this, he felt pity. "Nothing must happen to these children," he thought. "I must save them." One of the Yeltsin women whispered to Joel, "Use your flame ability. You can distract them." Joel nodded and made a decision. Taking aim, he directed the flame at the enemy headquarters. In an instant, the flames soared into the sky, and a huge explosion occurred. The enemy had been unexpectedly attacked and began to scatter in panic. Joel quickly crept down and, while the enemies were distracted, he headed for the cages where the children were being held. He had to find a way to unlock the cages. "You stay here. I'm rescuing the children," he said. The Yeltsin women checked around to support him. Joel moved quickly around the cages, examining the locks. The power in his hand prevented him from penetrating the enemy's thoughts, but he still had to be careful. The lids of the cages were thick and strong. As he tried to think quickly, he thought of using the flame inside him again. As he ran his hands over the locks, he suddenly felt the power to melt them with fire. The locks jerked open, and the lids fell down. The children jumped out of the cages and ran outside. "You saved us!" one boy shouted. Joel ran towards them, guiding them to safety. "Come here! Come with me now!" he said. As the children ran towards him, he saw the fear in their eyes slowly give way to hope and trust. Each one of them was happy to taste freedom. The enemies now turned their attention to Joel and the children. A dark figure stood out as the leader of the enemies. When the alien saw Joel, he flew into a rage. "You can't come all the way here," he shouted. "The children are mine." Joel stepped forward, reacting to the enemy's bravery and reckless attitude. "They are mine," he said firmly. "Let them go. You have no place here." The leading alien responded with a smile. "How weak you humans are. I have taken over your minds and kept the children, and now I will bring this terrible end." When Joel heard the leader alien's words, he couldn't help the anger building up inside him. Opening his arms, he activated his flame ability. He sent flames towards the enemy. "You didn't expect to face this, did you?" he said. As the flames danced around the enemy, the alien stepped back. Joel advanced towards it, continuing his attack. "That's enough. Leave the children and get out of here." The enemy looked around in panic. Joel summoned all his strength to corner the alien and neutralize it. Finally, the flames on the enemy intensified, and there was a huge explosion. The enemy fell back with a shriek and collapsed in front of Joel. "This is the end of you," Joel said, panting. "I am here to free the children." The enemy fidgeted for a moment longer, and then fell silent. Joel looked up at the children standing behind him. "You are safe now. Let's get out of here." The children gathered around Joel and hugged him. "Thank you. You saved us," they said. Joel was ready to take them to safety. The Yeltsin women rushed to him and congratulated Joel on his bravery. "You have done a great job," they said. "Now we have to go back." With the children, they hurried outside. The air was cool, and the darkness inside the mountain was a sign of a new freedom. Once outside, he heard the children shouting with happiness. "We are free," they said. "We must get the children back to their families," Joel said, turning to the Yelsan women, light with happiness. "It is my duty to make them feel safe." The Yelsan women came with him to the children. "We accomplished the rescue mission, Joel. We did it because of your courage," they said. Joel felt very good. "But this war will not end here. We will return to the children's families and make sure they are safe," he added. The Yelsan women guided them to get the children to safety. Joel wanted to see the happiness in the children's eyes when they reached their families. "Everything is okay now. You are safe," he told them. As they slowly made their way back, Joel longed to go home again. "Yelsan women, I have a favor to ask of you. Can you take me back to my home?" The women looked at each other and said, "Yes, but we will have to overcome some difficulties. Are you ready?" Joel listened to them and said, "I am ready for anything." Joel's courage and determination had not only saved the children, but had also restored hope to the Yelsan people. Now, with them by his side, he was determined to fight to realize his dream of returning to his own home. After rescuing the children, Joel felt like a great success. The Yelsan women surrounded him and thanked him. "Thanks to your courage and strength, we have our children back," they said. But after this moment of joy, the look of concern on the Yelsan women's faces darkened Joel's heart. "Now it's time to go home," Joel said with all his heart. "The children are safe. We can return to their families. The war is over." One of the Yelsan women took a deep breath and spoke. "Joel, thank you, but we can't do this." "What do you mean?" asked Joel, surprised. "This is not what we agreed. You will send me home." The Yelsan woman averted her eyes and said, "The alien leader may still be here to abduct our children. The possibility of another attack is very high. The safest way for us is for you to stay here." Anger surged inside Joel. "No, this is not what we agreed. I need to go home," he shouted. The sad looks of the Yelsan women made Joel even angrier. "They kidnapped our children, and I helped save them. Now why won't you let me go back?" "We understand," said another Yelsan woman, "but it is only safe for us if you stay. If you are not here, we are weakened and could be attacked again." Joel saw the determination in her eyes and felt helpless. "But I fought in this war. I saved the children. I was here to protect you. And now you are going to imprison me here?" The Yelsan women looked at each other and shook their heads sadly. "We didn't want this, but this is the best solution for us. We have to buy time," they said. Joel was at the height of his anger. "You can't keep me here. I can't stay away from my own home. This is a betrayal." Just then, one of the Yelsan women moved her hand to his waist. Before Joel could realize what was happening, the sound of a freezing gun suddenly echoed. "No!" Joel cried out, but the echo of his voice was lost in a cold mist. The freezing light enveloped Joel, immobilizing him. As his body froze, his thoughts continued to flow rapidly. "You mustn't do this! What do you gain by keeping me here?" Although the Yelsan women admired his courage, they had to carry out their decision. In a few seconds, Joel fell on cold metal and was locked in the dungeon. There was still worry and sadness in the women's eyes, but they also understood the reasons behind this difficult decision. When the dungeon door was closed, Joel was left alone with the pessimism he felt inside. He didn't know why he felt so bad. He thought the war had to end, but the Yeltsin women's fears were rooted in the instinct to protect their own lives and their children. "Why doesn't anyone trust me?" she thought. It was dark inside the dungeon. A few cold pieces of metal and tools of alien technology were visible on the wall. Feeling bad, he tried to suppress his anger and frustration. As his thoughts raced, he was crushed under the weight of the betrayal. After a while, the dungeon door creaked open. One of the Yeltsin women entered. "Joel, we had to make this decision," she said. The softness in her voice reflected her inner conflict. "I know this is hard for you, but there is a greater danger for us." Joel raised his eyes and looked at her. "How could you do this to me? I saved the children. Why am I here now?" The woman took a deep breath and said, "You know, we Yeltsin people have faced many hardships. For us, this is the only way to survive. The war is not over. The enemies are still after us." Joel turned his head away, not listening to him. "This is a betrayal. You are using me. He says the war is not over, but I was here for you." With tears in her eyes, the Yeltsin woman said, "I didn't want to keep you here, but we had no choice. If you leave, the enemy will come after you and kidnap the children again. We don't want that, Joel. Your presence gives us strength." Joel looked at her, his anger replaced by curiosity. "Do you really believe that? Is keeping me here a solution for you?" The woman answered with a nod. "Yes, we do. But maybe we should get over it. Somehow, we need to communicate better with you." When Joel saw her sincere look, he decided to challenge himself. "If you want to win this battle, you have to let me out. We can be stronger together." The Yeltsin woman admired his courage. "I would love to do that, but it is not possible right now. We still don't know when the enemy will return. We have to buy time. But one day, I will take you out," she said. Joel tried to find a glimmer of hope in her words. "Then we must make a plan. We cannot predict when the enemy will return, but we must be prepared." The woman thought about Joel's suggestion. "Maybe together we can find a better solution. If we can figure out when the enemy will return, we can win this war." Joel felt respect for the Yeltsin woman's determination. "Try to get me out of here. Staying in the dungeon is a punishment for me," he said. The Yeltsin woman nodded and promised to help him. "I will be with you. We must make a plan together to get out of the dungeon," she said. Joel felt hope begin to blossom inside him again. "Come on, let's make a plan. We have to win this war." The Yeltsin woman left the dungeon, promising to cooperate with Joel. Joel was ready to make his own plan, but first he had to prepare for the enemy's return. There was hope in his heart that perhaps he could escape this dungeon and face the enemy and become a true warrior. Now, an uncertain future awaited him. This uncertainty could be both a challenge and an opportunity for a new beginning. Joel hoped to come together to reshape everything and win the war. Joel leaned against the cold metal of the dungeon, frozen. His body was motionless, making him feel helpless, but his mind was still sharp and active. He had been affected by the beam, but the human mind was not as easily frozen as the aliens had thought. He was aware of everything. He could hear the sounds around him, see the lights moving, but the unresponsiveness of his body was causing him great distress. As his thoughts raced, the desire for revenge grew inside him. "They will get me out of here," he thought. "But one day I'll come back. I won't forget what those aliens did to me." The feelings of fear and helplessness Joel had felt at every moment of his life were now replaced by anger and determination. He began to make plans in his head, vowing that as soon as the freezing effect outside his body wore off, he would take revenge against his enemies, The cold walls of the dungeon added fuel to the fire in his mind. "I must return home, to my family," he repeated. The biggest motivation for him was to go back and continue helping children. He had to fight to prevent other children from becoming victims like him. Her abduction by aliens was a violation of the family structure and social order. Now she would do everything she could to change this situation. In his mind, he thought about how he should plan to take revenge. "First, I have to get out of here," he thought. "I must neutralize the weapon they used to freeze me. Then I will seize this ship and launch an attack against the Yelsan." For a moment, he smiled at these thoughts. His mental strategies were giving him strength. "I must find their weak points," he thought. "If I take over the control systems of this ship, I can prevent the enemy from returning." The freezing effect still lingered in his body, but in these moments, Joel did not lose the clarity of his mind. He felt that he could finally take action to find the aliens' weak points and take them down. The plan that emerged in his mind increased his determination. "They will force me to move again," he promised himself. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The anger and determination inside him had become a source of energy for him. "I will return home. I will see my family and protect them. This will be my revenge," he told himself. Even with his eyes closed, his mind continued to hear the sounds around him. The worried voices of the Yelsan women were a source of motivation for him. "If they get me out of here, they will be part of my revenge," he thought. After a while, at the end of the moments when his mind was frozen, something unexpected happened. While the effect of the freezing gun remained on his body, the determination in Joel's mind galvanized him into action. His mind began to focus on the sounds and events of the outside world, defying his body's unresponsiveness. "I have to get out of here," he thought. "I must move and take advantage of this time." Suddenly, he heard a voice. "We had to freeze them both, but this way, we'll have more casualties," said a Yelsan woman, flanked by another. Joel thought he could make something out of this dialogue. If two Yelsan women were coming together to refreeze him, then they had a weakness. The thoughts that formed in his mind became sharper. "If I can find the enemy's weaknesses, I can get out of here. These women who froze me need each other to use me again. I must take advantage of this," he thought. After a while, the noises from outside grew louder. He could hear the aliens running in panic, shouting instructions to each other. "This could be an opportunity for me," he said to himself. As his mind listened to these noises, he began to imagine himself. For a moment he found himself in the midst of these noises, freed from the freezing effect inside him. "Now, time to act," he thought. Amidst the noise, he noticed the concern on the Yelsan faces. "If they get me out of here, this will be my greatest victory," he thought. At that moment, a light appeared. Joel followed the light and decided to carry out the plans that had formed in his mind. "I must find their weak point and get out of here," he thought. Suddenly, the freezing effect on his body slowly began to subside. "There! I'm starting to move." He tried to open his eyes and slowly began to move his fingers. "No! He's still here!" shouted one Yelsan woman to another. "We have to freeze him again." When Joel heard these words, a fire burned in his mind. "No! You can't keep me here. I'm going to get out of here," he said, pulling himself together. His mind was defying the effects on his body. As his frozen body slowly began to move, the strength within him began to grow. "If I don't get out now, I may never get the chance," he thought. "If I miss this moment, I will regret it." In a few minutes, he slowly recovered, and the freezing effect on his body began to wear off completely. "Yes, that's it!" he cried out. I'm going to get out of here. He started to move himself. The Yeltsin women backed away, afraid that he would start moving again. "Oh no, we have to freeze it now," said one Yeltsin. Joel moved forward boldly to take advantage of the situation. "No, this is my moment. I'm getting out of here." As the Yeltsin women looked at him with eyes full of fear, Joel boldly began to run slowly towards the area where they had retreated. "Here! I'm here!" With the strength of being freed from a frozen body, he advanced on his enemies. "I will get out of here and take my revenge," he thought. "I will return home." The Yeltsin women retreated in panic at his movement. Joel managed to throw himself out, advancing against them with a strong will. "You can't keep me here. This is my time." As soon as he felt free, his eyes were back on the Yeltsin people. He could see their fear. "I am prepared to get out of here, and this will be my revenge," he said, and went into battle with determination. Finally, when Joel stepped out, he left all his fears behind. He was ready to take action, to reorient his life and get his revenge. He was no longer in the mind of a frozen mind, but that of a vengeful warrior. "I am here, and no one will stop me," he told himself.